Please, please stay with me. You need to stay with me. You will be fine, I promise. Give her life, everything you can, just to save her. She must live, doctor. You will be fine. The doctor said you will be all right. I'll be here whenever you need me.
The ambulance siren pierced through the morning air as Tyler Adderconnell cradled the unconscious girl in his arms, her frail body trembling against his expensive suit. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, staining his white shirt, but he didn't care. Her lips were cracked and pale, her breathing shallow, and for the first time in years, the billionaire CEO felt genuine fear grip his chest. "Stay with me," he whispered urgently, though she couldn't hear him. His driver had already called ahead to the hospital, but every second felt like an eternity. As the paramedics lifted her onto the stretcher, Tyler noticed something clutched in her dirty fingers, a faded photograph of family, burned at the edges. He grabbed it before it could fall, his heart clenching at the sight of a younger version of this girl smiling between two adults, all of them radiating happiness that seemed impossible now. Who was she? How did she end up collapsed outside his company gate, starving and alone? The questions haunted him as the ambulance doors slammed shut, and he climbed into his car to follow. Something told him this morning would change everything. Just 30 minutes earlier, Tyler had been living his usual life of calculated decisions and emotional distance. The 32-year-old founder of African Industries was worth billions, his tech empire spanning across West Africa with headquarters in Lagos. Women threw themselves at him. Business partners courted his favor, and his face graced magazine covers with headlines like Africa's most eligible bachelor and the king of innovation. But behind the charming smile and designer clothes, Tyler was empty. His childhood had taught him that love was a weakness, that people only stayed when you were useful to them. His mother had abandoned him and his father when he was 8, choosing a wealthier man over her family. His father had worked himself to death trying to prove he was enough, leaving Tyler an orphan at 15 with nothing but bitterness and a vow to never let anyone hurt him again. He had built his empire on that pain, using it as fuel to become untouchable, until this morning, when he found her, a homeless girl who would shatter every wall he had spent decades building. Tyler had almost missed her entirely. He was reviewing quarterly reports in the backseat of his Mercedes when his driver suddenly braked hard, muttering a curse. "What is it?" Tyler snapped, irritated at the interruption. His driver pointed toward the company gate where a small crowd had gathered, their phones out, recording something on the ground. Tyler's jaw tightened. Probably another beggar looking for attention. Drive around them. But as they moved closer, he saw her, a young woman, maybe 23 or 24, collapse on the pavement in clothes that were more rags than fabric. Her dark skin was covered in date, her hair matted, and she wasn't moving. The crowd was filming her suffering instead of helping, and something inside Tyler snapped. Before his driver could protest, he was out of the car, shoving through the onlookers with barely controlled rage. "Back up, all of you," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority that made board members tremble. He knelt beside her, checking for a pulse with trembling fingers. It was there, but weak. When he lifted her limp body into his arms, she weighed almost nothing, and he realized with horror that she was starving. The crowd gasped, recognizing him, their phones now capturing a very different story, the ruthless billionaire showing mercy. At the hospital, Tyler paced the emergency room like a caged lion while doctors worked to stabilize her. The staff treated him with the deference his wealth commanded, updating him every few minutes even though he wasn't family. She's severely malnourished and dehydrated, the head doctor explained gravely. Her body is shutting down. A few more hours, and we might have lost her. You saved her life, Mr. Adderconnell. Tyler didn't feel like a hero. He felt angry at a world where someone could die on the street while people recorded it for social media clout, angry at himself for almost driving past her, angry at the universe for putting her in his path when he had worked so hard to feel nothing. As he sat in the waiting room, he pulled out the burned photograph he had taken from her hand. The family in the picture looked happy, comfortable even, not wealthy, but not poor. What had happened to destroy that happiness and leave her alone on the streets? His phone buzzed with messages from his assistant reminding him about his 9 o'clock meeting with investors, but Tyler ignored them all. For once in his carefully controlled life, business could wait. When the doctor finally allowed him into her room, Tyler wasn't prepared for what he felt. She looked fragile in the hospital bed, hooked up to fours and monitors, her face peaceful in medicated sleep. But even through the grime and exhaustion, he could see she was beautiful, not in the polished, artificial way of the women who threw themselves at him, but in a raw, honest way that took his breath. He pulled a chair close to her bedside and did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed. Prayed that she would wake up, that she would be okay, that maybe this emptiness inside him could be filled by something other than revenge and success. Hours passed. His phone kept buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from his team, but Tyler silenced it. He couldn't explain why, but he knew he needed to be there when she opened her eyes. As sunset painted the hospital room orange, her eyelids fluttered. Tyler leaned forward, his heart racing in a way no business deal had ever managed. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused and confused, scanning the unfamiliar room before landing on him. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the billionaire and the homeless girl, and in that moment, everything changed. Then she whispered two words that would haunt Tyler for weeks to come. "Let me die." If this story already has you hooked, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because Tyler's decision right now will set off a chain of events that will test everything he believes about love, loyalty, and redemption. Tyler's chest tightened at her words, the raw hopelessness in her voice cutting through him like a blade. "That's not going to happen," he said firmly, leaning closer to the hospital bed. She turned her face away from him, tears sliding down her hollow cheeks. "You should have left me there. I have nothing. I am nothing." The defeat in her tone made Tyler's hands curl into fists. He recognized her emptiness. He had lived with it for years, just hidden behind expensive suits and fake smiles. But seeing it in her, so raw and exposed, awakened something protective he didn't know he possessed. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She didn't answer immediately, staring at the ceiling as if contemplating whether she even wanted to exist anymore. Finally, barely above a whisper, she spoke. "Aisha. Aisha Okonkwo." Tyler nodded slowly, committing it to memory. "Aisha, I don't know what brought you to that street, but you're here now. You're safe, and I'm not going anywhere until you're strong enough to tell me your story." Over the next 3 days, Tyler practically lived at the hospital, much to the confusion of his staff and the fury of his fiancée, Kimi. He had engaged a Kimi Danjuma 6 months ago, a strategic arrangement that satisfied both their families and looked good in the press. She was beautiful, educated, came from old money, and understood that their relationship was more business partnership than romance. But she was also viciously territorial, and when she stormed into Aisha's hospital room on the 3rd day, her Chanel perfume announced her arrival before she spoke. "So this is a little project that's been occupying my fiancé's time." Kimi's voice dripped with disdain as she looked Aisha up and down. Tyler, who had been helping Aisha sit up to eat, shot to his feet. "Kimi, this isn't the time." But Kimi ignored him, circling Aisha's bed like a predator. "Let me guess. You saw an opportunity when you collapsed outside his company. Smart move. I'll give you that. How long before you claim he got you pregnant?" Aisha's eyes widened with shock and hurt, but before Tyler could respond, she did something unexpected. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound that made both Tyler and Kimi freeze. "You think I want your man? I don't even want my own life. So please, take him and leave me alone to die in peace." The raw honesty in her voice silenced Kimi, but only for a moment. The socialite's face twisted with rage as she grabbed a designer purse and stormed out, her heels clicking violently against the hospital floor. Tyler returned to Aisha's bedside, his jaw tight with frustration. "I'm sorry about that. Kimi has no right." Aisha cut him off with a weak wave of her hand. "She's right, though, isn't she? You have a life, a fiancé, an empire to run. Why are you wasting your time on me?" Tyler sat down heavily in the chair he had practically lived in for 3 days, running his hand through his normally perfect hair. "I don't know," he admitted, and it was the most honest thing he had said in years. "Maybe because when I look at you, I see myself. The part of me I killed a long time ago to survive. Or maybe because for the first time in 15 years, I feel something other than anger." Aisha studied him with surprising intensity for someone so weak. "What happened to you?" she asked quietly. Tyler had never told anyone his story, not fully. But sitting in that hospital room, With this broken girl who had asked death to take her, he found himself talking. He told her about his mother's abandonment, his father's death, the years of clawing his way from nothing to everything. "I built an empire on hate and emptiness," he finished. "And I thought that was enough. Until I found you and realized I'd just been surviving, not living." Aisha listened without judgment, and when he finished, she did something that shocked him. She reached out her thin hand and placed it over his. "I lost my family too," she whispered, her voice breaking. 3 years ago. There was a fire." Tyler's heart clenched as pieces started falling into place. "The photograph," he said softly, pulling it from his jacket pocket where he had kept it safe. "This was them." Aisha's face crumpled as she took the burned picture with trembling hands. "My parents and baby brother. We lived in a small apartment in Soryule. I was in university, studying computer science." Tyler's eyebrows rose at that detail, but he stayed quiet, letting her continue. "I was at the library that night. When I came home, everything was gone. The investigation said it was faulty wiring, but I knew better. Our landlord had been threatening us for months because my father couldn't pay increased rent. He wanted us out so he could bring in wealthier tenants." Her voice hardened with a bitterness Tyler recognized. The fire destroyed the evidence along with everything else. No one believed me. No one cared. I was 21 years old, suddenly alone, with no money for school and no family to turn to. I tried to keep going, but grief and poverty are a lethal combination. I lost my scholarship, lost my apartment, lost everything. And after 3 years of fighting to survive on the streets, watching people step over me like I was garbage, I just gave up. Tyler felt tears prick his eyes for the first time since his father's death. This brilliant, broken woman had been failed by everyone, by the system, by society, by the universe itself. And something fierce and protective surged through him. "You're a computer science student?" he asked, his mind already racing. Aisha laughed that bitter laugh again. "Was. That life is dead." Tyler shook his head firmly, squeezing her hand. "No, that life is coming back. I'm going to help you, Aisha. Not because I pity you, but because you deserve a second chance. And maybe because helping you is the only way I can save myself from becoming a complete monster." Aisha searched his face for lies or ulterior motives, but found only raw sincerity. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care?" Tyler didn't have a good answer except the truth. "Because when you opened your eyes and asked to die, I saw my own soul reflected back at me. And I realized that if I let you go, I'm letting the last good part of myself die too." The intensity of his words hung in the air between them, charged with an emotion neither was ready to name. But before either could speak again, Tyler's phone exploded with notifications. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. Someone had leaked photos of him in the hospital with Aisha, photos taken by staff, probably sold to the tabloids. The headlines were already spreading like wildfire. Billionaire Tyler Adekon abandons fiancé for homeless woman. Adekon will secret mistress. Who is the mystery girl? And worst of all, gold digger alert. Street beggar traps Lagos' most eligible bachelor. What happened next would tear both their worlds apart and test whether love could survive when the whole world wanted to destroy it. Smash that like button and drop a comment if you're invested in Aisha and Tyler's story, because Chapter 3 is where everything explodes. The storm hit before Aisha was even discharged from the hospital. Tyler's phone never stopped ringing, investors demanding explanations, board members calling emergency meetings, and Kimi's father threatening to destroy Adekon Industries if Tyler didn't end this embarrassing scandal immediately. Tyler ignored them all, but he couldn't ignore what was happening to Aisha. Within hours of the photos leaking, reporters swarmed the hospital, bribing staff for information and camping outside her room. Social media exploded with brutal commentary calling Aisha a prostitute, a con artist, and worse. Someone had found her old university records and twisted them into a narrative that she had dropped out to trap wealthy men. The lies spread faster than truth ever could, and Tyler watched helplessly as Aisha withdrew into herself, the small spark of hope he had ignited dying in her eyes. "I told you," she whispered when he showed her an article calling her Lagos' most successful beggar. "I'm poison. Everything I touch dies. You should save yourself while you can." But Tyler's response was to move her into his private penthouse the moment doctors cleared her for discharge, hired a full security team, and held a press conference that shook the entire city. The conference room at AFRICAN Industries was packed with journalists, cameras, and flashing lights. Tyler's PR team had begged him not to do this, to let them handle it with carefully crafted statements and strategic silence. But Tyler was done hiding, done playing games. He walked onto the platform in a simple black suit, looking directly into the cameras with an intensity that made viewers lean forward. My name is Tyler Adekun, and I'm going to tell you a story about the day I found my humanity again. The room went silent. For the next 20 minutes, Tyler laid bare everything, finding Aisha collapsed and dying, learning about her tragedy, realizing she represented everyone society had failed. He didn't confirm or deny rumors about their relationship, but he made one thing crystal clear. Aisha Okonkwo is under my protection now. Anyone who attacks her, lies about her, or attempts to harm her will face the full weight of my legal team and my personal wrath. And if that makes me unfit to be your CEO, your investor, or your business partner, then so be it. I've spent 15 years building an empire, but what's the point of power if you can't use it to defend someone who can't defend themselves? The room erupted with questions, but Tyler walked off the platform without answering any of them, leaving his shocked PR team to handle the aftermath. The response was explosive and divided. Half the internet called Tyler a hero, praising him for his compassion and honesty. The other half called him a fool, claiming Aisha had clearly manipulated him and would destroy his empire. His board called an emergency meeting that same afternoon, and Tyler knew he was walking into a war zone. The 12 members of AFRICAN Industries board sat around the mahogany table looking grim, with Kimi's father, Chief Danjuma, leading the attack. "You've gone mad," Chief Danjuma declared, his voice booming through the conference room. That press conference was corporate suicide. Our stock has already dropped 6%. Investors are pulling out. And you've humiliated my daughter publicly. Tyler leaned back in his chair, his expression calm despite the fury building inside him. Your daughter and I have a business arrangement, not a love story. She knew that when she agreed to this engagement. Chief Danjuma's face turned purple with rage. That arrangement is worth hundreds of millions in merged assets. You think you can just walk away because you found some street girl who makes you feel like a savior. The other board members murmured in agreement, and Tyler realized they had already decided before he walked in. They wanted him out, or at least controlled. One of the older board members, Mrs. Oladil, cleared her throat delicately. Tyler, we all admire your charitable impulse. But bringing this girl into your personal life, into your home, makes it look like there's something inappropriate happening. For the good of the company, we think you should distance yourself, let your foundation handle her case, and focus on repairing your image. Tyler listened to each board member voice similar opinions, their words carefully crafted to sound reasonable while demanding he abandon Aisha. When they finally finished, he stood up slowly, his 6'3" frame suddenly seeming to dominate the room. I founded this company when I was 20 years old with nothing but a laptop and a dream. I built it into a multi-billion-dollar empire through my vision, my work, and my sacrifice. Not yours. His voice was quiet but carried lethal authority. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to continue making decisions about my personal life without your permission. If the stock drops, I'll buy the shares myself. If investors pull out, I'll find new ones. If you can't handle working with a CEO who has a conscience, then submit your resignations, and I'll replace you by Monday. The room went deathly silent. Tyler looked each board member in the eye, seeing some waver and others harden with resentment. Then he turned to Chief Danjuma. As for the engagement, consider it ended. I'll pay whatever penalties a contract requires, but I will not marry your daughter to make you richer. Chief Danjuma stood up so violently his chair toppled backward. You'll regret this, boy. I will destroy you and that homeless whore you're protecting. When I'm done, you'll have nothing. Tyler smiled coldly. I've been destroyed before, Chief. I built everything from nothing once. I can do it again. Tyler left the meeting knowing he had just made powerful enemies, but he felt lighter than he had in years. He drove home to his penthouse, where Aisha was supposed to be resting and recovering, but when he walked in, she wasn't in the guest room. He found her standing on his balcony 30 floors up, looking down at the city lights, and his heart stopped. "Aisha," he called softly, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. She didn't turn around, her thin frame swaying slightly in the wind. "I saw the news," she said hollowly. "You ended your engagement. Your board is threatening you. Your stock is crashing. All because of me." Tyler moved closer, every instinct screaming at him to pull her away from that ledge. "That's not because of you. That's because of me choosing to be a decent human being for the first time in my life." Aisha laughed that terrible, broken laugh. "Decent? Tyler, you don't even know me. We've spent 72 hours together, and you're destroying your life for a stranger. Don't you see how insane that is?" Tyler reached out carefully and took her hand, feeling her fingers ice-cold despite the warm Lagos night. "I see someone worth saving. I see someone brilliant and kind who got dealt a horrible hand by life. And I see my last chance to be someone other than the empty, angry man I've become." Aisha finally turned to look at him, tears streaming down her face. "What if I'm not worth it? What if I'm too broken to fix? What if I destroy you?" Tyler pulled her away from the edge and into his arms, feeling her collapse against him, and something in his chest cracked open. "Then we'll be broken together," he whispered into her hair. But neither of them knew that at that exact moment, Kimi was meeting with her father and Lagos' most ruthless tabloid publisher, planning revenge that would push them both to the breaking point. Want to see if their love can survive what comes next? Hit that subscribe button now because Chapter 4 is absolutely devastating. Aisha woke up screaming. Tyler bolted from his room down the hall, his heart pounding as he burst through her door to find her tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, her eyes wild with terror. "Fire! They are burning! I can smell it!" she sobbed, not fully awake, trapped in the nightmare that had haunted her for 3 years. Tyler didn't hesitate. He climbed onto the bed and gathered her into his arms, rocking her gently like she was something precious and breakable. "Sure, you're safe. There's no fire. I've got you." It took nearly 20 minutes for her breathing to calm, for her to fully emerge from the nightmare's grip. When she finally did, she found herself pressed against Tyler's chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "I'm sorry," she whispered, mortified. "I have them every night. The fire. Watching my family burn while I stand outside helpless." Tyler tightened his arms around her. "Don't apologize. Never apologize for surviving trauma." They stayed like that until dawn broke over Lagos, neither willing to let go, both terrified of what they were feeling but even more terrified of losing it. That morning, Tyler made a decision that would change everything. He was going to help Aisha rebuild her life, starting with finishing her education. He reached out to his contact at the University of Lagos and arranged for her to re-enroll, personally covering all costs. But he didn't stop there. Tyler called a meeting with his head of HR and his most trusted tech team leaders. "I have a new project," he announced, pulling up Aisha's partial university transcripts on the conference room screen. "This woman has a brilliant mind for computer science. She lost everything before she could finish her degree, but I want to create a position for her here, an apprenticeship program where she can work, learn, and eventually contribute to our development team." His HR director, a sharp woman named Tinyola, raised an eyebrow. "The girl from the news? Sir, with all due respect, that's going to cause problems. The staff already think you're playing favorites because you're romantically involved with her." Tyler's jaw tightened. "I'm not romantically involved with her. I'm giving a talented person a chance they deserve." But even as he said it, he knew he was lying to himself. Every moment with Aisha made his carefully constructed walls crumble a little more. He was falling for her, and everyone could see it except apparently him. Tinyola sighed. "Okay, but you need to be prepared for backlash, especially after last week's drama. And speaking of drama, there's something you need to see." She pulled up a tablet and showed him the latest tabloid headlines. His blood ran cold. The article was titled "Homeless Seductress," inside Aisha Okonkwo's web of lies, and it was devastating. Someone had fabricated stories about Aisha's past, claiming she had been arrested for theft, that she had multiple children she abandoned, that her family's fire was caused by her own negligence. Every word was a lie, but each one was crafted carefully enough to seem plausible. Worse, They had quotes from former classmates and university staff, all painting her as manipulative and dangerous. Tyler's hands shook with rage as he read. Who published this garbage? Teen Yola looked uncomfortable. Eclipse Media. They are owned by, let me guess, Chief Danjuma. Tyler's voice was ice. Teen Yola nodded. He has partial ownership. And there's more. Kimi gave an exclusive interview this morning. She pulled up a video of his ex-fiancée sitting in a pristine television studio, dabbing at fake tears with a designer handkerchief. I thought Tyler and I were building something real, Kimi told the sympathetic host. But then this woman appeared, and she just latched onto him. I've tried to be understanding, but watching the man I love destroy himself for someone who clearly has ulterior motives is heartbreaking. The host leaned in conspiratorially. You think Aisha Okonkwo is manipulating him? Kimi's face arranged itself into concern. I think Tyler has a savior complex, and she's exploiting it. I just hope he realizes the truth before she destroys everything he's built. Tyler turned off the video, his mind racing with fury and strategy. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Chief Danjuma and Kimi were systematically destroying Aisha's reputation to force Tyler's hand. And it was working. By noon, 3 major investors had pulled out of upcoming deals, citing concerns about Tyler's judgment and stability. 2 board members submitted their resignations, just as Tyler had offered, but instead of freeing him, it triggered a clause in the corporate charter requiring a vote of confidence from the remaining board. If he lost that vote, he could be removed as CEO of his own company. But Tyler barely cared about any of that. His only concern was getting home to Aisha before she saw the news. He was too late. When he walked into the penthouse, Aisha was sitting on the floor surrounded by printed articles, her face pale and expressionless. Don't, she said flatly when he approached. Don't tell me it's going to be okay. Don't tell me we'll fight this together. Just don't. Tyler knelt beside her, his heart breaking at the defeat in her eyes. Aisha, none of this is true. Everyone who knows you knows it's lies. Aisha looked at him with something like pity. But that's the thing, Tyler. Nobody knows me. I'm just a homeless girl you picked up off the street. Why would anyone believe me over Kimi Danjuma and her father's media empire? Tyler grabbed her shoulders gently but firmly. Because I believe you, and I'm not going to stop fighting for you. Aisha's face crumpled. Maybe you should. Maybe everyone's right and I'm just destroying you. You've lost investors, board members, your fiancé, and for what? A broken girl with nothing to offer you except trauma and baggage. Tyler did something he hadn't planned, something that terrified him more than any business deal or boardroom fight ever had. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It wasn't calculated or strategic. It was desperate and real, pouring 3 weeks of suppressed emotion into that one moment. When he pulled back, Aisha was staring at him with wide, shocked eyes. I don't care what I lose, Tyler whispered fiercely. Money, companies, reputation. I built those things out of emptiness and anger. But you make me feel human again. You make me want to be better than the hollow success story I've become. So no, I'm not letting you go. Not now, not ever. Aisha's eyes filled with tears, but for the first time, they weren't tears of despair. Tyler, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone care about me without pushing them away. Tyler smiled, brushing away her tears with his thumbs. Then we'll figure it out together, one day at a time. But their moment was shattered by Tyler's phone ringing with an urgent call from Teen Yola. Sir, you need to turn on the news right now. Tyler grabbed the remote and turned on the television, and what he saw made his blood run cold. There was Aisha's old landlord, the man she had accused of causing her family's death, being interviewed as a sympathetic figure. That poor girl lost a family, and instead of accepting it was an accident, she became obsessed with blaming me, the landlord said with fake sadness. I tried to help her, but she was unstable. I'm not surprised she ended up on the streets. The news anchor nodded sympathetically. So you're saying Aisha Okonkwo has a history of making false accusations? The landlord's eyes glittered with malice hidden behind concern. I'm saying she needs psychological help, not a billionaire boyfriend. The implication was clear. Aisha was crazy, dangerous, and Tyler was a fool. And then the screen showed something that made both Tyler and Aisha freeze. Police walking into AFRICAN Industries headquarters with a warrant for Aisha's arrest on charges of fraud and extortion. Kimi and her father had just declared war, and they were playing for keeps. Comment below if you're Team Tyler and Aisha, and make sure you're subscribed because the final chapter will determine if love can really conquer all, or if the world will tear them apart. The police arrived at Tyler's penthouse within the hour, and despite his lawyer's protests, they insisted on taking Aisha into custody. Tyler watched helplessly as they handcuffed her, his mind racing through legal strategies and power plays, but Aisha's face remained eerily calm. "It's okay," she told him quietly as they led her away. "Maybe this is how it was always supposed to end. Street girls don't get fairy tale endings." Those words haunted Tyler as he mobilized every resource at his disposal, calling the best criminal defense attorneys in Nigeria, threatening Chief Danjuma with counter lawsuits, and personally reviewing every piece of evidence the prosecution claimed to have. The charges were flimsy, claiming Aisha had intentionally positioned herself at his company gate to seduce and extort him, using her family's tragic story to manipulate his emotions. It was absurd, but in the court of public opinion, it was working. Protesters gathered outside the police station with signs reading "Gold diggers deserve jail" and "Protect our billionaires." Tyler realized with sickening clarity that Chief Danjuma didn't need to win in court. He just needed to destroy Aisha's spirit and make Tyler choose between his empire and this woman. But what Chief Danjuma didn't understand was that Tyler had already made his choice the moment he picked Aisha up off that street. The bail hearing was brutal. Aisha sat in the defendant's chair looking small and defeated, her public defender barely competent, while the prosecution painted her as a criminal mastermind who had orchestrated an elaborate con. Tyler sat in the gallery, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white, forced to remain silent while they destroyed her. But when the judge asked if Aisha had anything to say before setting bail, something unexpected happened. Aisha stood up, her thin frame straightening with a dignity that silenced the courtroom. "Your Honor, I'm guilty of one thing: surviving. 3 years ago, I lost everything in a fire that killed my family. I went from being a university student with dreams and a future to sleeping in alleys and digging through garbage to eat. I became invisible. People stepped over me like I was trash. Some threw coins at me like I was a dog performing tricks. Others spat on me or told me to get a job, as if anyone hires someone who hasn't showered in weeks and wears rags." Her voice grew stronger, carrying pain but also a fierce pride. "And then one morning, after giving up and letting myself starve to death, a stranger saved me. Tyler Adekunle gave me medical care, safety, and something I thought was dead: hope. I didn't ask for his money. I didn't seduce him. I literally asked him to let me die. But he refused, and that changed everything." Aisha turned to look directly at Tyler, her eyes meeting his across the courtroom. "This man owes me nothing. We barely know each other. But he looked at me and saw a human being worth saving, and that act of kindness is being twisted into something ugly because powerful people don't like losing control. So if you want to punish someone for that, fine, lock me up, but don't you dare call compassion a crime." The courtroom was silent. Even the prosecutor seemed momentarily thrown by her raw honesty. The judge studied Aisha for a long moment before speaking. "Bail is set at 50,000 naira." It was a nominal amount, barely anything, and Tyler realized the judge had just sent a message. These charges were nonsense. Tyler paid the bail immediately, and when Aisha walked out of that courtroom, he was waiting. She collapsed into his arms, all her bravado crumbling now that she was safe. "I can't keep doing this," she sobbed into his chest. "Every time I think things might be okay, they find a new way to hurt me. Hurt us." Tyler held her tight, his mind made up about what he needed to do next. That night, he called a press conference that would either destroy him or prove that some things were worth more than empires. The press conference was scheduled for the next morning at AFRICAN Industries headquarters, and rumors were already swirling about what Tyler would announce. Many assumed he would distance himself from Aisha to save his company. Chief Danjuma certainly thought so, showing up uninvited with Kimi on his arm, both wearing victorious smiles. Tyler walked onto the platform looking exhausted but determined, Aisha standing beside him despite her lawyer's advice to stay hidden. He had spent all night working on his statement, but when he opened his mouth, he abandoned the script entirely. 3 weeks ago, I was the emptiest human being you could imagine. Successful, yes. Wealthy, absolutely. but completely dead inside. I had convinced myself that was enough, that emotions and connections were weaknesses I couldn't afford. And then I found Aisha. He turned to look at her, and the entire room saw the raw vulnerability on his face. She didn't ask me for anything. She was dying on the street outside my company because she had given up on a world that had failed her repeatedly. And something about her suffering cracked open something inside me I thought was gone forever, the ability to care about someone other than myself. Tyler turned back to the cameras, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. Over the past 3 weeks, I've been attacked by people who think loving someone without wealth or status makes me weak. I've lost investors who care more about optics than ethics. I've faced a board rebellion and watched powerful people try to destroy an innocent woman just to punish me for stepping outside their control. And here's what I've learned. All of that means nothing compared to what I've gained. He reached back and took Aisha's hand, pulling her forward to stand beside him. Aisha Okonkwo is brilliant, kind, resilient, and the strongest person I've ever met. She survived 3 years of hell that would have broken most people. She's not a gold digger or a con artist. She's a woman who lost everything and is fighting every day to believe she deserves a second chance. And I'm not going to apologize for helping her, protecting her, or falling in love with her. The room erupted. Cameras flashed wildly. Reporters shouted questions. Kimi's face went white with rage while her father turned purple. But Tyler ignored all of it, keeping his eyes locked on Aisha, who was staring at him with tears streaming down her face. "You love me," she whispered, barely audible over the chaos. Tyler smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time in weeks. "I'm terrified of how much I love you, but I'm more terrified of going back to being the empty shell I was before you." Aisha threw her arms around him, sobbing openly, and Tyler held her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to earth. When he finally looked back at the press, his expression had shifted to something harder, more dangerous. "Now, let me address the real criminals in this room." Tyler's gaze landed on Chief Danjuma with lethal precision. "Chief Danjuma, you spent the past 3 weeks using your media empire and political connections to destroy an innocent woman because I refused to marry your daughter for your financial gain. You fabricated evidence, bribed witnesses, and filed false charges. You thought I would break, that I would choose my empire over my conscience." Tyler's smile turned cold. "You were wrong. Over the past 72 hours, my legal team has been very busy. We've uncovered financial irregularities in your media holdings, including evidence of bribery, tax evasion, and, most interesting, proof that you paid the original landlord to give false testimony about Aisha's family's fire. In fact, we found building inspection records that were buried showing your construction company did the faulty wiring that caused that fire, and you covered it up to avoid liability." The room went deathly silent. Chief Danjuma's face drained of color. Tyler continued relentlessly. "I have documentation of everything. Every bribe, every fabricated story, every illegal transaction. And I've already submitted it all to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the Nigerian police force. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop all charges against Aisha immediately. You're going to issue a public apology admitting your media outlets published false information. And you're going to pray that I don't pursue criminal charges for what you did to her family." Chief Danjuma found his voice, though it shook with barely contained fury. "You're bluffing. You have nothing." Tyler pulled out his phone and projected documents onto the screen behind him. Bank transfers, emails, recorded phone calls. The evidence was damning and irrefutable. "Try me," Tyler said quietly. "I built an empire from nothing. You think I don't know how to destroy one?" Kimi suddenly lurched forward, her composure finally cracking. "This is insane. Daddy, do something." "He can't." But Chief Danjuma grabbed his daughter's arm, his eyes never leaving Tyler's face. He saw something there that made him realize he had underestimated this young billionaire. Tyler wasn't the cold, calculating businessman he pretended to be. He was someone far more dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose because he had already found something worth more than everything. After a long, tense silence, Chief Danjuma nodded curtly. "The charges will be dropped." Tyler nodded once. "Good. Now get out of my building." As security escorted Chief Danjuma and Kimi out, the press exploded with questions, but Tyler turned his back on all of them, focusing only on Aisha. She was staring at him with wonder and disbelief. "You did that for me." Tyler cupped her face in his hands. "I would burn down my entire empire for you. In fact, I almost did." 6 months later, Aisha stood in the gleaming headquarters of AFRICAN Industries, no longer as a rescued homeless girl, but as a junior software developer with her own desk, her own projects, and her name on the company roster. She had re-enrolled in university part-time, completing her degree while working, and Tyler had been there for every late-night study session and every panic attack when her trauma threatened to overwhelm her. It wasn't easy. Healing never was. Aisha still had nightmares about the fire. She still sometimes woke up in Tyler's penthouse, which had become their penthouse 3 months ago, panicking that this was all a dream and she would wake up on the street again. But Tyler was always there, patient and steady, helping her rebuild trust in the world and in herself. The company had survived too, though transformed. Tyler had replaced half his board with people who shared his values, restructured his priorities to include massive charitable initiatives for the homeless, and launched a foundation in Aisha's family's name dedicated to helping fire victims and displaced families. His stock had recovered, but more importantly, he had recovered. The empty, angry man who had found Aisha on that street was gone, replaced by someone who actually cared about more than profit margins and revenge. On a warm Lagos evening, Tyler took Aisha to the exact spot where he had found her 6 months ago. The company gate looked different now. There was a memorial plaque installed, not for anyone specific, but dedicated to those we walked past, those we failed to see, those who deserve better. Aisha read it with tears in her eyes, then turned to Tyler with a questioning look. "Why did you bring me here?" Tyler took her hands, his heart pounding harder than it had during any business negotiation. "Because this is where my life actually began. Everything before this moment was just noise, empty success and hollow victories. But hey, on this spot, I found you, and finding you saved me." He dropped to one knee, pulling out a simple but elegant ring. "I'm not asking you to marry a billionaire or a CEO. I'm asking you to marry Tyler, the man who was drowning in his own bitterness until you taught him how to feel again. The man who still has nightmares about almost driving past you. The man who loves you more than he thought it was possible to love anyone." Aisha was crying openly now, her hands shaking in his. "Tyler, I'm still broken. I still have bad days. I still wake up terrified that this is all too good to be true." Tyler stood up, keeping the ring but pulling her close instead. "I know, and I'll be there for every bad day, every nightmare, every moment you need someone to remind you that you deserve happiness. Because you saved me too, Aisha. You made me human again." Aisha looked up at him. This man who had refused to walk past the suffering, who had fought the world for her, who had chosen love over empire. "You really want to marry a former homeless girl with trauma and trust issues?" Tyler laughed, the sound free and genuine. "I really want to marry you, Aisha Okonkwo, not despite your past, but because every single thing you survived made you into the strongest, bravest, most incredible woman I've ever met." Aisha took the ring from his hand and slid it onto her own finger, then pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like salt from their mingled tears and sweetness from hope finally fulfilled. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, I'll marry you, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of someone who saw me when I was invisible." Tyler shook his head firmly. "You were never invisible, Aisha. You were just waiting for someone to actually look. And I'm so grateful I was the one who finally saw you."